welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name is Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and we'd like to thank Backscatter Underwater Photo and Video for sponsoring this episode. Backscatter do a huge range of cameras, housings, and other equipment. Please check them out at backscatter.com. So I'd like to welcome our regular contributor, Alex Mustard. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Adam.
So, yes. Good. Hi, Alex. Nice to see you. Nice headdress.
Yeah, these, as you might have guessed, belong to my daughter, and they were just on my desk, so I thought I'd use them. They do work, actually. They're Bluetooth, and they actually work, so I could use these for all my video conferencing from now on. She wears these in the back of the car, and they've got blue and red flashing lights, which always makes me concerned as I'm driving down the motorway.
Pulled over.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Right. Excellent. So, Alex, first of all, you put me right off my stroke here.
That's my plan.
It worked. Congratulations. Obviously, we've just had the results of the Wildlife Photographer of the Year. For those that don't know, Alex produced a lovely image of an ornate ghost pipefish in a crinoid shot. Well, we'll talk about how it was shot later on. But it's a wonderful image, and Alex placed first in. God, remind me which category, Alex. I can't remember which.
Natural artistry.
That's
it's
natural.
And I'm just getting to grips with the name of it.
I'm glad you paused too, because I knew it was natural something, but I couldn't remember it was natural patterns or natural artistry, and it's a very beautiful image. So well done, congratulations. Obviously, as always, a wonderful achievement. I know it's not your first, but each one is very, very special, and is very well deserved. That's great. So, but obviously, I thought, sort of getting back to work, really, that it would be a good opportunity for us to discuss some of the other marine and underwater related images that were in the finalists. Well, perhaps what we should do, Alex, is start off with your image. So tell us a bit about your image, please.
Well, my image is of a ghost pipefish in a crinoid, but in a competition like this, I think you're not going to be successful with a really good standard shot. You really need to be pushing the boundaries of nature photography, because obviously all the big guns turn out for these competitions. I think we're quite used to sort of during the year seeing the same names doing well again and again in underwater photography competitions. And I think one of the exciting things about WPY when it comes around is suddenly all these people that you aren't normally seeing doing competitions suddenly roll out all their best shots, and you see a whole range of new images as well. And this year, before I talk about my picture, it was a fantastically exciting year to be in the competition, because it was just such an amazing celebration of underwater photography. Driven partly by the fact that the competition has introduced 2 new categories which give underwater photos a real additional chance in the competition. One is called Oceans, the bigger picture, and one is called Wetlands, the bigger picture. And they're both environmental conservation habitat driven categories, and I'm sure we'll talk about some pictures from those later on. And so that gives underwater photographers more possibilities. And then also one of often thought of as the second biggest award in the wildlife photographer, the Wildlife Portfolio Award, this year was won by Angel Fitor with his pictures of African cichlids from Lake Tanganyika. Or was it Malawi? I forget now. It's Tanganyika, actually, if it's Angel. And so then that put in another 6 underwater pictures. So I think it must be the year of the most underwater photos in the Wildlife Photographer of the Year, and that's really exciting, I think, for all of us, because it's putting so much attention on the underwater world, conservation issues, the amazing life that's down there. And I think after there not being that many last year, it feels like a real good redressing of the balance. So yeah, it was a really exciting night, and it is a very closely guarded secret. You really don't have a clue who else is going to be awarded when you turn up to the awards. So it's always very exciting to be there live, or to watch the live stream and see the pictures coming up for the first time. And then I've just spent 2 days, down in London, doing various events around the museum and around the gallery, and just marveling at the huge prints. And that gallery opens to the public on Friday. So yeah, it's really that, and that for me is the best way to see the pictures, where you've just got them presented beautifully backlit in a lovely dark room where you've got the time to really enjoy them from a distance, enjoy them up close,
Yeah.
read the captions, and look at them again with fresh eyes after reading the captions. And it's a fantastic experience seeing them that way.
Yeah, it is. It is a good point because obviously we've got two new watery categories, haven't we? Which actually, does definitely increase the amount of underwater images that potentially can be submitted. I guess that's they're not necessarily underwater for either category, but are water related at the very least. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's almost now not a category where, in the past it was like, you underwater people, you've got to stick in your underwater category, stay in
Yeah,
your lane, guys.
yeah,
And now there's not really a category in the competition you couldn't be winning
yeah.
with an underwater picture. So that's really changed. And I think that's something we've got to be really excited about as underwater
Yes,
photographers.
I agree. I agree. So, I mean, the other sort of major event from this year is obviously that we've got Laurent Balesta, who actually was awarded as the Wildlife Photographer of the Year, he was the winner of the underwater category, and also obviously won as Wildlife Photographer of the Year. So again, I mean, in general terms, in terms of us as wildlife photographers, as underwater photographers, this is a significant moment really in the competition, and for us, that an underwater image has been selected as the best wildlife image of the year, which is quite something, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really talk about this when I was down there, but I guess it's the fourth time that we've had an
Right.
underwater image as the overall winner. I
Yeah.
apologise if I've got that wrong. It's quite difficult to
Mm.
to remember them all quickly. But yeah, it's the fourth time, and so that is pretty monumental in 57 years. It happens less than once a decade,
Yeah.
if I've got my numbers correctly. So that's really really exciting for the competition and particularly for all of us.
Yeah.
I think it's a vet for me. I think it's a well. First of all, in terms of the winner, I think Laurent is definitely the caliber of photographer who absolutely deserves this type of award with all the incredibly groundbreaking photography that he has done around the world. And I'm sure we'll talk about a few of the shots. Also, this year he was the photographer in the competition who had the most individual pictures awarded as well,
Yes.
and then to take top honor. So it's like a real kind of clean sweep of all the stats, as it were. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. I really love the overall winning picture of his. I think it's a photo that is in those great traditions of wildlife photography. And I think wildlife photography is not one style, one way of doing things.
Mm.
But what I love about Laurent's picture is it's going somewhere and bringing an image back which we have not seen before. And part of wildlife photography is that taking on that challenge of breaking new ground. Wildlife photography can also be going to Africa and taking a picture of a lion, a subject we've seen many times, in a new and exciting and interesting and beautiful way. But wildlife photography can also be going out there, going into the wild, and capturing an image of something that we have not seen before. And I think that this picture very much falls into that second category, and that is still something that we look to our very best wildlife photographers to do. And then the fact that for me the picture is also very beautiful, adds a lot to that.
So for me, I'm somewhat at odds with this image. I must be honest, in that I think it's a spectacular image. I know exactly what's going on in it. I appreciate the difficulty and of capturing this image. It's a huge problem, and
While you're being disturbed by your phone, Adam, I was just going to say one thing for anyone who's watching this for the first time, and I know this episode last year was very well watched. Whenever we discuss competition results, we don't see the point in sitting here just going brilliant,
yeah,
brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Right? We always try and cast a critical eye over the winners. Talking about what we love, but also not just saying everything's great just because it's won a competition.
So sorry, as I was saying until I was so rudely interrupted. Yeah, to me, it's an amazing moment. There's no doubt about it. But I actually don't get it from a photography perspective. At the end of the day, yes, to be in the right place at the right time to capture this image took an immense amount of effort, and he should be rewarded for that. But it is an underwater photography competition, and I'm photographically, it doesn't really do it for me. It's a fantastic document of behaviour, and yes, as I say, it deserves to be rewarded for that. But I don't get the photographic element to it. I don't get the real skill of the photographer. I do of he is a very skilled photographer, but I don't get it from this image. And that for me, I think is probably, I like it. I can certainly appreciate it sitting here as knowing what it's about, but I'm on the fence a little bit in terms of its photographic merit,
Mm.
which is,
Yeah,
as I say,
it's great. I mean, it's great. You know, we sometimes do get criticised about always agreeing on everything, so it's good that we have
yeah,
a disagreement, a difference of opinion.
yeah,
I love it because it's what I said before. You know, it's about going out in the world and seeing and capturing something we haven't seen before.
mm,
It captures that decisive moment,
mm,
as Laurent's countryman, you know, Henri Cartier-Bresson would have said.
mm,
This is a split second photo, and
yep,
photos are incredibly powerful when they capture that peak of the action
yep,
moment.
yep,
There's a balletic shape to what's going on that I get a lot out of. And Laurent in his speech talked about the fact that, you know, there is this serendipitous question mark hanging over these fish, which talks a lot to how
yep,
perilous spawning aggregations are and how they're so easily exploited by humans, and we're able to wipe out entire adult populations because the fish need to come together in these numbers to spawn. And I think the fact that, you know, I like the fact that this is not an easy photo to take. You know, this
mm,
is deep and dark and difficult to be there, and
mm,
strong currents, and all those things together. And, you know, anyone who's shot wide angle at night knows that it's a very challenging type of underwater photography, you know, for lots and lots of reasons.
mm,
And I think this picture, with elements of backlighting in, you know, wonderful timing, all those elements come together. And for me, those things make it an incredible achievement. I do get some of what you're saying in that, um, you know, is it, is it the most beautiful picture on its own? Perhaps not. But I get so much about it because the way I read it as a photographer, as a
mm,
marine biologist, it really speaks to me in those terms. And you have to remember, they have academic staff from the museum on the judging panel as well as photographers. So, you know,
mm.
you have all those opinions mixing in.
And it's important to stress that any opinion, any selection by in a competition is based on the judges at the time. They're the ones that make the decision. We're not. I'm not certainly not trying to second guess their opinion is theirs, and that's fine. It's just it's more of a personal interpretation of it really than a criticism, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, and we both spoke how much we loved his other picture in the underwater category, the
yeah,
shrimps. You know, so
yeah,
it's yeah.
yeah,
I think I would sort of just close on this by saying, as underwater photographers, this is something that we should definitely be celebrating as a community, because
absolutely.
whenever underwater photos have this sort of platform, it is a real boost for what all of us do,
Yeah,
and the things that we all care about as well get a tremendous amount of attention. You know, there is these pictures. You know, it almost seems trite to say they go around the world, but they are seen by millions of people,
mm,
and not just for the next day or two in newspapers or on, you know, Twitter or Facebook or wherever they're being shared.
yeah,
They last for years as well-known pictures, and these stories really get embedded. And I think that's the power of still imagery,
yeah,
is you can have this long relationship. You know, yes, you know, television has huge reach and really also changed his minds, but it tends to be here today, gone tomorrow, whereas
yeah.
still images have that staying power.
They do.
And no
Yeah,
doubt this picture will still be being looked at, you know, in decades' time, and being
yeah,
talked about and being debated. And I
yeah,
think that's the real power of it. Right, we
yeah.
need to move on.
We do, and I think we should move on to yours, Alex. So, um,
Okay.
we mentioned it briefly, but obviously, Traken with a Trioplan 100.
Yeah, I'll just sort of give my, we always try and look critically at the images.
Mm,
It's my photo. I chose to enter it, so obviously I like it. I would say if someone said to me, Alex, show me 20 of your best pictures, I'm not sure I'd necessarily show this one. For
mm,
me, it doesn't feel that central to what I do as a photographer.
mm,
Um, but it's a picture I'm very proud of.
mm,
My impression of it is that I've probably had more random messages from people I've never met telling me that this is their favorite picture in the exhibition. But I also know other people are there going, you know, congratulations, Alex, and have nothing to say about the photo, which, you know, to me speaks that they're like, yeah, I'm really happy you won, but this one doesn't do so much. And I think I really like that. I think a lot of my pictures tend to be quite crowd pleasery. And I like the fact that this one is a bit more of an opinion splitter. There are
yeah,
some people who are just like, meh. And then there are others who absolutely love it.
yeah,
And I think the wildlife photographer competition has, you know, because I guess of the interest of photographers and the interest of the public, has increased the amount of photojournalist, conservation type images, with new categories coming in, and the amount of purely artistic underwater images has shrunk. We used to have, black and white categories and, you know, um, more artistic design type categories, and they've
Yeah.
all kind of been pushed together into this new natural artistry category.
Yeah.
And there are some people that go, that enjoy this exhibition who just, who still love that pure beauty or,
Mm.
aesthetic side of photography. And this is a picture that obviously has, grabbed a lot of their attention. So I've been amazed how many people have written to me,
Mm.
not friends who are saying, well done, but people I've never met saying this is their favorite picture. Oh my God, it is incredible. So it's great to have a picture that, perhaps divides opinion, but for the people who like it, they really love it. So
I think
that's kind of my takeaway on that side.
I think stylistically it is very different for you, Alex. If I was to look at this picture without knowing it was shot by you, I wouldn't necessarily go, "That's a mustard picture," which I think is. I mean, I think that's both. I think well, it's not both. I think that's a real credit because I think it's showing your versatility of your skill. I mean, you've produced an image that's a winner at this level of competition. That it isn't your normal style, which is quite an achievement, I think. Um,
Yeah, I think, I mean, the backstory of quite a lot of my photography is that the majority of my diving, perhaps unlike some of the other winners in this competition, is
mm,
done on workshops that I'm running.
mm,
And it means that I'm often photographing subjects that nobody else wants. This was taken on a workshop trip in Dumaguete. We were down with the dive guides. The dive guides were uncovering all sorts of fantastic animals, and
mm.
all the group, were all, getting stuck into, all sorts of, weird and wonderful frogfish
Good
and
stuff.
seahorses and
Yeah, yeah,
nudibranchs.
yeah,
And no one was, this one had been left alone by everyone, and I
yeah,
decided to spend some time with it.
yeah,
It's, and in fact, one photography friend who wasn't on that trip emailed me and said, well done for winning with a subject that we've all seen,
yeah,
and most of us would probably not be that fussed about.
yeah,
And I think that does mean a lot to me, because it means that you're not going out there and seeing something that no one else in the world has seen, and
yeah,
your photo is therefore remarkable. You're
yeah.
going out and choosing something everyone's seen. I
And
think the only
shooting in
other
a
point
unique way.
I think it's important to make about this is it's taken me quite a long time to get to this shot with the Trioplan lens. And, I've written about the Trioplan lens in my book and talked about it. But when I first started using that lens,
Mm,
for me, it was all about the technique and all about me and showing off how clever I was using this lens and getting the strongest bokeh effect as possible
yeah,
behind my subject. And those pictures, I don't think were successful in the wildlife competitions because those pictures were about me. They weren't about wildlife. They were
mm,
about how clever I was being.
mm,
And it was really, here's my, and the subject could have been anything. All I wanted to do was show how clever my background was.
mm,
And I think why this picture has appealed is the photo is a photo about subject and background and their relationship. And the
yeah,
choice of lens, I think, is completely consistent with, and in fact enhances that story of how this newly arrived to the reef ghost pipefish is struggling in that environment. And I think that appealed to the judges. I think the final thing I have to say about it is that the judges would have been completely unaware of the technique in this. I
yeah,
was joking with a friend that, they wouldn't know what lens I use because vintage lenses don't write anything to the EXIF.
yeah,
So there's no way they would have had any inkling into what lens I'd use for this picture. So they're not reacting to it as a technique shot or that I did anything clever. They only find that out after judging. But they
yeah,
do react to the fact that I think it offers something fresh in underwater photography. And in a competition with 50,000 entries, being fresh and standing out, I think helps you win. But I'm
yeah.
very aware with the general reaction to this picture, as in, it's a meh or I love it picture. It's a shot that needs the right jury on the right day. So as always, you feel very grateful to have got
Can,
picked.
can I divert you from your valiant efforts to move on here and just how do you light it? I haven't figured it
It's
out.
super easy. I mean, it's the challenge of shooting open aperture shots is that the ambient light tends to overwhelm everything. So the first thing you need to do is get your ISO way low,
Yeah,
shutter speed nice and high, and then add a pair of sunglasses to the lens and neutral density filter to quell all that light down.
yeah,
And then this is just simply lit with nice soft even light lighting the whole scene. And I think these bokeh type shots tend to work well with everything lit evenly.
Yep.
So it's kind of strobes, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, nice
Yep.
even light over the scene. It was a pair of original retro flashes in this case here. And it's predominantly an ambient light shot. I'm sorry,
Yep.
predominantly a strobe light shot,
Strobe light
but
shot,
it is
yeah.
shot with a balance. There is an ambient light coming through the back of it,
Yep.
which I think just creates that depth and feeling. And it's. I think the one thing that does feel consistent to quite a bit of my macro in the last few years is I do like these relatively small in the frame macro shots. I'm not
Yep.
here's a critter as big as possible on a black background type
Yeah.
macro shooter.
Everything on an eyeball. No, it's a lovely image. Again, Alex, congratulations. I mean, it's a stunning image. And again, as you said with Lawrence, I'm sure it's one of those images that we're going to be seeing time and time again over the forthcoming years. It's now it's
Especially
out there.
at Christmas, I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can
or
see.
when the exhibition tours Las Vegas, I think that's what they'll use it a lot at those things.
I think some baubles hanging around would look good for the. So moving on to one of the new categories, and this is the Oceans, the Bigger Picture, and the winner was won by Jennifer Hayes from the States of a. It's a surface shot. It's not an underwater shot. I don't know if it was shot with a drone. No, it was actually shot with a helicopter. Sorry, so it's shot out the door of a helicopter, and it shows harp seals on the broken up ice, and it's a very engaging shot, I think, because you look at it and first of all you're not altogether sure what's going on, and then once you start realizing what's going on, it gets more and more interesting.
I really like the shot for this category. These new categories have been introduced, and actually all of us have been waiting for the results because we weren't. You read the words of the category description, but you're never quite sure what they're looking for. And I think now we've seen a set of results. It's very clear that they want pictures that have a strong link to the habitat, and particularly conservation or the environmental reasons about that habitat. And what I like about this picture is, as a winner of the oceans category, it says to me the magnificence of the ocean, the scale, of the ocean, which obviously the oceans cover 72% of our planet. They're huge, and I get some of that scale in this picture, but I also get fragility. The cracked ice after the storm, the blood smears from the newborn, there's this fragility, there's, and thankfully it's kind of, it doesn't feel, although, maybe, the ice is thinner because of climate change, it doesn't feel like a heavy hand of man. It just shows, the challenges of life, in the picture. And I think it's obviously, it's a beautiful picture. And in the gallery, when you see it across the room, you're trying to figure out what it is, and it's a picture that just sucks you to walk towards it to figure it out. And then when you see it printed, huge, it's got a tremendous detail. And perhaps the advantage of shooting it with a proper camera out of a helicopter than a drone is the fine detail in it is incredible.
I think the combination of this idea of the fact that the ice is fractured, but the seal pups are okay, but it's almost like there's a tension there. You're aware that if that's more fractured, then the seal pups won't be okay. So I think it's a really powerful image on lots of different fronts. I like your point.
About it, though. Oh, sorry. What I like best about it is that Jen now has bragging rights in the house.
Yeah, absolutely.
she beat in the category her other half, David Duboulet, who was only commended in the category that Jen was the winner of. So if they'd been there, I think there'd have been a lot of fun around. Around that. Yeah. Just for anyone understanding that they were there. This year, the awards ceremony, because of COVID and travel restrictions, which are now mostly out of the way, but at the time these things had to be decided, it was decided not to have a big international gathering of photographers for this year's awards, which is normally one of the highlights of winning in this competition, is this incredible meeting of minds, meeting of people at the Natural History Museum for 3 or 4 days, really, but based around one big celebratory evening and then a number of spinning on events. And it's always a lot of fun, and it's always really impressive. And it would, I think it would have been a lot of fun to have David and Jen there, and I'm sure Jen would have been remarking on the finishing positions.
I bet, yeah.
We should look at David's picture actually quickly.
Yeah, no, it's a lovely picture, and it's although wasn't one of the finalists, it certainly could have been. Yeah, lovely.
No, no. David's picture in the category is
Yeah,
the coral one. Yeah,
yeah,
yes,
yeah. So it was amongst the finalists. It wasn't one of the winners. My apologies. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay.
So, yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting project and idea, and I think as stills photographers, the issues of climate change in the ocean are really hard to tell in
Yeah,
one picture because a lot of people aren't aware of the before state.
yeah,
And so when you show the after, particularly some of the bleached coral pictures can be very beautiful.
yeah,
And people are like, oh, wow, that looks amazing. And it's like, and, yes, that beauty can make them read the caption, but in a still image, it's very hard to say. And I thought David's idea of taking the old picture down and photographing it, I thought spoke very visually on that. And I
yeah.
think we'll get, we'll particularly in the exhibition, we'll get a lot of attention.
Yeah, it's certainly the juxtaposition, and as you say, it illustrates the change. This is often a
Mm.
problem. People see a reef for the first time, they think that's how the reef looks, and what they, of course, don't have, they don't have the perspective of 50 years of looking at the reef.
Well, again, his picture, I think, was only 10 years before. It's not like,
Yeah,
this is
yeah, yeah,
happening not in my lifetime, but in children's lifetimes already it's changing,
yeah, yeah,
So it's a real wake up call picture. So, yeah, very
yeah.
nice. Right. Should
And
we move on to another category?
yeah, okay. And so I thought we'd move on to the portfolio award. You mentioned it earlier
Oh,
by Angelo Fitol, which is of the cichlids from Tanganyika, Lake Tanganyika. And just selecting one image, which is the image which was selected by the contest organisers. It's called Face Off, and it's these two cichlids, jaw to jaw,
mm.
and I think it's two males basically seeking to basically get the best nest, from what I gather. Um,
It's kind of what males do, isn't it? That sort of stuff,
yes, yes, it is.
particularly around competition season, I think.
Yeah, yeah, round about now. Yeah,
Uh,
anyway,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I have been a huge fan of Angel's pictures from Tanganyika for a long time. This has
mm,
been a long running project for him, and he's
mm,
been creating remarkable images from a very difficult destination to work in, politically unstable, remote. Plenty. I think he's had plenty of nasty bugs and diseases while he's been out there making this story,
mm,
and also not one that's there's necessarily a big natural appetite for. It's
yeah,
not like a go and photograph, sharks and everyone's going to love it.
yeah,
You're taking pictures of small little freshwater fish, but they are absolutely remarkable cichlids. The incredible radiation of species in there
yeah,
teaches us so much about evolution and how when you've got empty niches, diversity radiation can happen so quickly.
yeah,
And the cichlids in Tanganyika, as these are in Malawi and to some extent in Victoria, they are incredibly interesting biologically,
yeah,
as all these fish are beginning to specialize into all the different roles that they can perform in the lake, and
mm,
with really incredible behaviors. I
mm,
love some of the parental care and that aspect, and I think it's fish are often seen as the lowest form of vertebrates,
mm,
and I love any photo that shows me how complicated and advanced sort of the behaviors of fish are.
yeah,
So I think it does a great deal for changing perspectives on our subjects.
yeah,
So I love this portfolio. It's got 3 or 4 of my favorite pictures in the whole competition within
yeah,
it, and I'm so happy because this is as I said I think at the very top. This is for me always the second biggest award in the wildlife photography. It doesn't always get as much attention because it's quite hard to show the whole portfolio often. But I think it's a magnificent measure of you as a photographer, and it's a really special award.
Going back to sort of some of my comments, I think one of the things about it's one thing to get an amazing moment in one shot. It's another thing to produce a portfolio of images that show, a variety of amazing behaviours. And I think that really shows a dedication to a subject that it isn't necessarily there in the sort of single image categories.
Mm.
And the fact that you've got to produce a bunch of work that is both charismatic and beautifully taken is a really tall order, and I think this is a really good example of that, and it's great that it involves fish as well, which is what we like. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I
so
think I'm surprised he didn't also have some, or maybe he did, but I would have thought that these shots would have also been very well suited to the wetlands category.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
maybe he's got some up his sleeve for next year.
Yeah. So moving on, it's quite it shows the depth of the underwater imagery that was awarded. Is Justin Gilligan's picture of the seaweed, effectively,
Yeah,
in the plants and fungi, which won the plants and fungi category. And obviously it shows a reflection of a snorkeler surrounded by these beautiful, luxurious seaweeds, and it's seaweed is not something that people take pictures of, and it's a great shame. Well, not don't see. It's a great shame because it's incredibly beautiful, as this picture so eloquently shows. Really.
yeah. I think difficult to photograph,
Mm,
and it's very unusual that one of the kind of more pure wildlife categories has a person in. In the
mm,
photojournalistic
true.
category,
Yeah.
people, fine all the time. The only other example I can think of a person being in a winning wildlife photographer picture is Brian Skerry's famous whale meeting Mauricio, the diver,
Mm,
photo.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's the only other time I can think of one.
Yeah.
I do think this picture needs the person.
Yeah.
Sadly, I think without that person, maybe a jellyfish or something there, it would have been okay. But without that focal point provided by the person, and
Mm,
the divers not only got a torch to help drag attention to them, they're also backlit with another torch or strobe behind them or something. I
yeah.
think that person and their contrasting pink rash vest and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
it does add a lot to this picture. This picture oozes classy photographic technique. There's a
Yes.
lot of very good technique in this photo. Very sensitive lighting. Backlighting. It's a very well planned photo in an environment which I'm sure if you moved, you stir up sand immediately.
Yeah.
So probably a very challenging picture to take. Very well taken by Justin, and it has got an incredible diversity of algae in. So it is a
Mm,
really fascinating picture. I'm probably going to be wrong with this sweeping statement, but I can't remember an underwater picture winning in this category before. So
mm.
that's quite a feather in his hat. I know underwater pictures have been awarded in the plants and fungi category, but I don't remember one winning. I'm sure the moment we hang up on this call, I'll be like, oh yes, of course. But
I actually, you were mentioning, I wonder how he got the reflection. So, because obviously he's managed to do it without any ripples, there's no sign of any disturbance in the surface reflection. It's quite, you mentioned the technical challenge, managing to do that. He's either underwater, he's underwater holding his breath, like hopefully on snorkel, I don't know, and
well, I
rebreathing or
think like the
something.
model,
Yeah,
you've hit the nail on the head. We did that Wetpixel live recently about snorkels,
yeah,
and in this environment, the last thing you want to be on is on scuba. He
yeah,
may not even have been in the water. He could have
yeah,
been
it's
lying on
possible.
the side with the camera in.
Yeah,
And the way you get this closed reflection is to have the camera very near the surface.
yeah,
As soon
yeah,
as you start to go down, you open up that angle, and then your angle of incidence is such that you can see through.
mm,
The light no longer reflects it. You can see up through the surface, and you begin to get Snell's window. So you have to be right near the surface. With the wider the lens, the closer to the surface you need to be to get this completely enclosed reflection. And I think that creates a claustrophobic feeling in the frame. It almost creates a frame within a frame that
yeah,
concentrates your eyes on the detail. And this picture in the exhibition, big, there is so
wonderful.
much to enjoy in all those
Mm,
textures. It
mm,
is, you have to see it big. I know a lot of us these days see all these pictures on our phone and never
mm,
actually seek them out on a bigger screen. And this one is really worth seeing in the exhibition.
mm. And kind of the last image, I think, of our sort of curated highlights is again the winner of the amphibians and reptiles category, which is João Rodrigues' picture of a pair of salamanders in a mating pair of salamanders in a flooded forest. And to me, it's a very otherworldly sort of image because we've got the sun behind the trees, and then um, these salamanders apparently floating in midair. Of course, they're not; they're in mid-water. But it's a very cleverly crafted image. I think the sort of the narrative that it presents is it's almost sort of mythical, magical sort of type of sort of feeling to it. Flying salamanders. What do you think, Alex?
No, I really love it.
Yeah.
I've seen this picture before because we awarded it in Underwater Photographer of the Year earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Although although the wildlife photographer doesn't allow pictures that have been awarded in competitions before, as long as you haven't entered them after they've basically, that was absolutely fine, because the two competitions, UPY, or Wildlife Photographer of the Year, had closed for entries by the time UPY announced,
Results.
it's not an issue. We only commended it, or highly commended it, in UPY. Much to my frustration, if you read the caption about it on UPY, it says something like, "This was one of my favourites in the competition." I couldn't convince the other two judges to place it higher. And I think the beauty of it, just it feels like this enchanted forest, and these are magical animals within it. The light, and then the fact that this is such a rare occurrence where you get this forest flooding like this. I think it's a really fantastic image, a very special image, and very deserving of this accolade. So I think it's a really great shot, and great. It's not uncommon that the winner of this invertebrates category, amphibians and reptiles category, can be underwater. But there's always underwater ones in the mix in it, and perhaps it's easier to stand out with underwater ones in this category because so many amphibians do the most exciting parts of their lives in water. I think I think it's a fantastic image. It's this one I feel, though, is one of those shots that it feels very classic wildlife photographer. It's completely deserving, but this could have been awarded 10 years ago or now. Whereas some of the other shots seem more contemporary, if you know what I mean. They're perhaps breaking new ground, which is not a bad thing, because it also means probably in 10 years' time, this one could still be awarded, when perhaps some of the other shots, including mine, maybe would be seen as of their time. I
don't think it hasn't got necessarily the graphical power that some of the other images have, but it has this immense story going on, which I can go either way on this. I like both, so I do really like it as a story. That's been wonderful, Alex. It's a great roundup.
Yeah, it's really worth mentioning that there are a lot more underwater photographers in the competition this year. Usually we'd be able to cover them all, but there's just so many, which is great for all of us. Do go to the it's nhm.ac.uk/WPY. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But if you search Wildlife Photographer of the Year, you'll obviously find the category-winning pictures, at least in media outlets everywhere. But if you go to the wildlife photographer page on the Natural History Museum, you'll be able to dive in the whole collection. And most people's favourites are never the big winners. So it's always your own personal favourite is likely to be something else. So do dive into the whole collection. It's really worth it.
And we may well revisit and have a look at some of the other images as well, perhaps more of a kind of a selected highlights of our particular favourites as well. I think that's probably quite likely. If we get time, we'll try and record an episode about that too. It's a wonderful collection, Alex. Congratulations again. It's another wonderful achievement, but I'm sure it still feels very special, and it's an image to be very proud of. So well done.
Well, I mean, it's definitely a competition that you never take for granted success in it. And every time I am awarded, I make sure that I celebrate it as if it's the first and as if it will be the last. Because you never, there's no guarantees of ever getting back. Even if you continue to take fantastic pictures for the rest of your life, you may just never quite get the luck with the judges, the nod on the day. So I always make sure I enjoy it to the full when it does come my way.
Well, all the very best, Alex. Well done. And I would like to thank our sponsors again for this episode, which is Backscatter. Thanks very much. They make these episodes possible. Please feel free to add any comments in the comment section. I will add a link to the the full collection in the show notes. And drop us a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again soon.